Welcome to the Digital Marketing Mentor. I'm your host, Danny Gavin, and together with industry leaders and marketing experts, we'll explore the meeting point of mentorship and marketing. We'll discover how these connections have affected careers, marketing strategies, and lives. Now get ready to get human. Hello, everyone. I'm Danny Gavin, founder of Optidge, marketing professor, and the host of the Digital Marketing Mentor. Today, we have a very special episode where we're going to take a deep dive into a real-life case study where a company came to Optidge with an SEO problem. And at first glance, it was, a simple technical issue. But when you dig a little deeper, there was a lot more to be found. So I'm really excited that Mandy Politi is with me here today. She's a senior SEO strategist at Optidge. And Mandy's first episode on the Digital Marketing Mentor was a huge hit. So it's really awesome to have her back here to discuss the special case study with me. How are you, Mandy?
Good, Danny. Thanks a lot for having me again in the podcast. I'm really excited.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So we had a company, and due to privacy, we're not going to give the name of the company during the episode, but we're going to talk a lot about it, and you'll still get a good idea of who they are and what they do. Company came to Optidge with a website of about 12,000 pages. And in general, this website that they have it's like a search engine. The ability to search social posts and different creators and different things like that. So it's a website filled with content, a lot of really good content. So naturally, at first glance, when you have a website that has a lot of content, it's like, oh, Google's going to love this. It is a very rich website, and honestly, Google should index all the pages. We should be found on multiple SERPs, and we should be getting a lot of traffic. And obviously that wasn't the case. And they looked around for a lot of different companies to see, how they could help them. In particular, there was a technical SEO issue with Search Console. So Google Search Console is a free tool that Google has that allows you to see the back end of your website from a search engine perspective. Some of the things it tells you are like technical errors, also search query data, which means what actual phrases do you show up in Google, both which are the ones that bring you clicks, but also which ones do you just show up for, which would be impressions, what's your average position. There's a lot of other neat little things inside Search Console. And since it's a free tool, really, there's no reason why anyone shouldn't just connect it to their website and get access to that data. So one of the areas of Search Console is submitting a sitemap. So for those who don't know what a sitemap is, it's usually an XML file, which is a type of file. But bottom line, what it is, it's a list of web pages, all the pages that are on your website. So instead of Google, naturally, which is a crawler, coming in and going through your website, starting at the homepage and going through a link from one link to the next and figuring out all the pages on the website, here you provide them with one file, which could lead to other files as well. You could have multiple sitemaps. And we'll talk about, in this case, that's actually the situation with this client. And Google then has the ability to see all of the pages that are on the website all in one spot without having to uncover them manually by scaling the website and crawling it. So this client had quite a few sitemaps. Most of them were indexes, which means one sitemap which led to a bunch of others. So for example, let's say they had pages of people starting with the letter A for their name. So imagine that there's going to be a link that says, okay, these are all the pages from A to M. And then these are all the pages from N to Z. And when you clicked on that, then you would go to the other sitemap. So imagine you have like a master sitemap and then smaller sitemaps which break it up. And part of this reason is because it allows you to keep things more organized. It allows you to update the sitemaps. But also there are limitations with sitemaps. You cannot have more than 50,000 links on one sitemap. And it's crazy to think that would even happen, but there's many reasons why you'd want to break out your sitemaps. A cool thing like on WordPress websites, and if you use like the Yoast plugin, Yoast will automatically generate your sitemap and will break it down into like a video sitemap and an image sitemap. So there's a lot of cool things with sitemaps. But getting back to the case at hand, when submitting their sitemap to Google Search Console, they got an error. And that error is couldn't fetch. Mm-hmm. And if you look around with a couldn't fetch error, there's a lot of reasons for that, right? It could be that Google just hasn't had time, or there's a problem with your sitemap, and there's a lot of potential issues. of where it could happen. But the bottom line is the client came to us because they thought that their site had a lot of content and they were not getting the amount of organic traffic that they expected. And they felt that one of the reasons for this was because inside Google Search Console, for some reason, Google could not fetch those sitemaps. So imagine we're telling Google, hey, here are all these pages, check them out. But Google's saying, sorry, I can't fetch them. I can't read them. So in their mind, they're like, ooh, we're not getting traffic because Google can't fetch our sitemaps. That's the problem here. How can we go ahead and fix this issue so that Google can now read our sitemaps? And hopefully our content will now actually rank and we'll get all that traffic, which we should be getting. At first glance, it's a pretty, simple issue, right? It's like a search console issue. It's a technical issue that for some reason Google can't read that sitemaps. Now, at the end of our talk today, we will talk about solutions for this problem. However, in the initial analysis, we saw that content quality might be the bigger issue here rather than the sitemap. So therefore, we decided, yes, we need to come up with a solution for the sitemap issue, but we need to go a little bit deeper and we need to assess which pages on the website are high quality, are low quality. Like, what's the situation here? Maybe the reason that Google doesn't like the content on this website is because of the actual content that's there. And just in general, for more info on how we approach SEO content in general, be sure to listen to our SEO content episode with Mandy, where we go a lot deeper into how one can optimize content for SEO. So now, Mandy, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's talk about, before we dive in and say what was the actual issue on this website, let's first talk about what's the difference between high quality content and low quality content.
If you think about what high quality content is, it's basically content that is really useful for the user. It provides reliable information and it's there to really help the user learn something or do something versus just ranking or providing information for the search engines. So in the end of the day, high quality content is content that is really helpful and provides a good experience to the user who lands on the page and reads it. Now, when it comes to low quality content, we basically have content that can even be considered borderline spammy, like anything that's, for example, script content, like, for example, copied content from another website that it's not really unique. Thin content, for example, thin pages on websites that they only include images or just a little bit of text. So these pages by default, they don't provide really any useful information. So users most likely are going to land there and then just exit to find something like more relevant to what they're looking to find for. And then we have also search results pages, for example, pages that they shouldn't even be indexed, that they should be blocked in the first place because they are internal pages that they shouldn't be there. This is a common problem with e-commerce websites where sometimes the clients don't really block these pages, and then you end up with a lot of pages that they are just search results. And then users find them on the search results and they click and they go and it's just empty pages. Like, this is basically the definition of a low quality page.
And Mandy, the crazy thing about low quality content is, like, by definition, it's like, ooh, you put it there to try to trick Google or to easily rank without doing any hard work. But in truth, that sometimes you don't do it in a bad way. It's just the way that your site is, the way that you've set up your content. The content is considered low quality by Google, and therefore Google's not going to like it. And that really was the issue that we had here with this client. A lot of the content, right? Even if they had 12,000 pages, but a lot of the content in our eyes, we really felt that Google would likely consider this as low quality content. And you think about it, the foundation of a website where you're using it as a search engine to help try to find creators or social media and different things like that. A lot of that content, right, could be low or thin. So let's talk a little bit of some of the things that we actually found.
I think it's also a very good point what you just said, Danny, that sometimes clients don't want to create low quality content just to manipulate the results or because they want to rank by creating a lot of pages. Sometimes it just happens. You don't really think of, okay, probably I need to add more content. You just create the page. You think that it's useful. But this is why it's really important to actually put yourself in the shoes of the user and think, okay, if I land on this page, am I going to learn what I came here to learn? Like, am I going to find this useful information? So it's really an interesting point that sometimes it just happens. It's not always just because you are trying to manipulate the search engines to make your website rank better. Going back to the case study, I think that that's a really important point that we started analyzing the content itself to identify what's going on there before we go to the sitemap. And then what we found is that basically this website indeed had the low quality content issue. They had a lot of copied content from other from the company's social media accounts. They had a lot of search results pages that they were empty of content, and they also had a lot of account pages. Now, this is not, for example, the account pages is not an issue actually, but if you think about it, how Google would look at it, they are empty pages, they don't have a lot of content, so they wouldn't really provide the user the information that they would be there to find. So the problem now is that when you have a lot of low quality content, you are basically preventing Google from finding your good content, your high quality content, and that's an issue. So when you find that this is the problem, you need to sit down and think, okay, I have all these pages. Do I want Google to actually see all these pages? Is there a reason why I have them there? And then what if I reduce them or I try to improve them so that I help the actual high quality pages to be found and be discovered not only by Google or the search engines, but also by the users. It's going to be easier for a user to navigate in a smaller, more targeted website than like a website that has 12,000 pages. But you cannot even include all of them in the navigation, you know?
Yeah. And so the crazy thing here, and I want to clarify, is that all this information is actually, in this case, is good for the users, right? I'm going onto a site, I'm searching for an influencer, and then I want to see the information about him. I want to see his social media posts. That's all great. But the problem is that this website does the function. It's an aggregator tool. It brings everything together. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that in Google's eyes, that's great that you're aggregating this information, but this information is found other places, right? That information is already on Instagram. That information is on Facebook, or the search results pages, right? You've got these search results pages. A lot of the results are similar, or there's not really enough attributes on the page to make them unique. Exactly. So the search result page is still like it's helpful for the user because I'm searching for this influencer in this area, and then I get a list of all those people. That's helpful to me. But in the way that Google analyzes websites, they don't want you to give them 10,000 search results pages and suddenly we're going to index all. To them, that's actually a problem. So it's funny herein the whole product, that they created, is helpful for the user, but just because that content's helpful for the user doesn't mean that Google likes it. And therefore, it was like the total opposite. It's like the fact that you've set up your thing this way, Google's not going to like it.
Exactly. And also, if you really think about it from the Google perspective, you have a page that is duplicate from, for example, let's say Instagram. So why would Google prefer to show the website result and not Instagram directly? Because probably it identifies it as the right result for the specific user who typed the specific query. So again, it is useful, but at the same time, is it really that useful? Because perhaps the user actually wanted to find the Instagram page instead. So again, you need to consider how to create something that is going to be good for Google, like to pass, let's say, the assessment of this is good, useful content, but also to make sure that you're putting there a page that it's exactly what the user is looking for this specific search term.
I love that example, Mandy, because remember, what we're talking about here is, they're looking for people to find them through Google search. But when someone is typing, they're looking for the content of, let's say, a specific influencer within Google search, right? They're most probably looking to go to like the actual Instagram page or something else like that. It's different, right? So that's the intent of the person coming to Google. So therefore, Google wants to give them the actual source of the information. While inside this actual website, it's a really good website, but it has a different function. And therefore, that we're going to start talking about this like part of the solutions of maybe they should have created different content in order to rank in Google, right? If you wanted to actually rank in Google, what are we going to do? So we'll talk about keyword research in a little bit. But before we do this, I think now's a great time to talk about, okay, if you have low quality content on your website, either because, let's take it in the positive. not because you did it on purpose to like try to ruin Google, but it's just because you've got pages that either are thin, they're copying different things like that. How can we deal with that? And I believe there's two ways of dealing with it. One is to get rid of it. The other is to add content or value. So Manny, why don't you go ahead and explain that to us?
So, like you said, Danny, there are two solutions. The first solution is get rid of it. You don't necessarily need to delete or remove it completely from the website, but what you can do is you can block it. You can either block it through the robots.txt file, or you can use no index, no follow tags. This is a good solution because you don't need to remove content that probably you want to keep or you think it's useful for your audience. At the same time, you help a little bit control this 12,000 page situation and try to focus on the pages that are actually bringing traffic or are very useful and unique to the user and by extension to the search engines.
And blocking, through the robot.txt or adding a robot meta tag is a very common thing. And especially in the case of this client where they need all those pages, right? They don't want to get rid of them, but we want to block them from Google and say, hey, Google, we have these pages, but you don't need to see them, because the goal for these pages is not for people to find these pages through Google, but rather it's for people to find these pages through our website. Exactly. Once they're at our website, we want people to see these pages. And we see this from e-commerce as well, right? Best practices is on the search results page. Every time you type in a query and then a search result page pops up, ideally, you want to block those. And once again, you don't get rid of them. You don't get rid of your search engine on your website, but you block the pages so that when Google finds them, you tell Google, hey, it exists, but please don't take a look at it because it's not required.
And it's a really fast and efficient solution, to be honest. So the second solution now is review these pages and optimize them, improve them, add more content, and by extension, add more value to them. Now, this requires a little bit more work because you actually have to go through all these pages, review them, see what kind of unique content and useful information you can add. And there are also location-based pages, which in the case of this client was also an issue. They were using a dynamically created pages that the location would change, which again would create a lot of pages with thin content, pages that you would have the title with the offering plus the location. And in this case, for example, you can keep these location pages because sometimes this is how the users are looking for. They're looking for results near them. But try to add unique location-focused information to create a page that it's going to be relevant to the location that you want to target. And this is a good way of also fixing the problem, albeit it will take a little bit more of time, but you will have to actually go and, which takes us to the next step, the keyword research, that you need to first find what the users are looking for and try to either optimize your existing pages according to that or create new pages that target these terms in a good and useful way.
Exactly. So just to kind of introduce the whole keyword research concept. So why would a website like this need to do keyword research? Because even though they had 12,000 pages, they were getting the same amount of organic traffic as some of our clients with fewer than 200 pages. So 12,000 pages, 200 pages. What does that mean? It's because the majority of the content on their website doesn't match what people are searching for on Google. Now, of course, the information on the website is very valuable to people, but people aren't necessarily searching for that in Google, right? So if you want to generate traffic from Google to your website, you need to find those things that people are actually searching for and that will provide value, right? To put, once again, like we said before, to post the same exact page that's on Instagram, that's not going to provide value. Instagram can do that better. But if you can provide a piece of content, a landing page, an article that is going to provide value to that user and match what they're actually looking for, then that's magic. And the more of those pages that you can create, the better. Let's talk a little bit further, specifically in this case study, why it was so important for them to do keyword research.
They didn't have content that was matching what the users were looking for, or they might have this content, but they didn't actually target the right terms. Like they didn't actually have the keywords within the page. So it was really important as a recommendation for us to the client that they need to actually do this. They need to conduct keyword research. They need to find what the users are looking for that is relevant to the offering of this client. They could also check what competitors we are targeting, what was ranking, and what was appearing on the first page of Google for these terms. And using all these insights, then they would have a nice list of keywords and of terms that would match the right search intent of the user and would help bring the right traffic in. So that was basically the recommendation. But because they didn't do that up to this point, that resulted to the website ranking basically only for branded terms and only with the homepage, despite the fact that they had 12,000 pages. So they didn't really perform for relevant non-branded terms that users were using to find services and products similar to what they were offering. So that was very important for us to recommend to the client that they need to perform keyword research and try to build either optimize existing pages or build new pages that target these terms well in the usual on-page SEO ways. And part of this recommendation was also to make sure that you interlink these new pages with optimized anchor text to make sure that you guide the users and the search engines to the correct pages. And at the same time, you help for other relevant pages discoverability. Because also that's really important. It's really important for search engines to be able to go through your website and find and discover other relevant pages. But it's also really useful for the users because sometimes users, they are looking for something, but they are interested in also finding other relevant pages, similar content. So it's really important. So it's not only about doing the keyword research. It also boils down to actually implementing well, either by optimizing existing content that you have identified that it can potentially become high quality, like for example the local based pages, or you can create new pages. It can be landing pages, it can be blog posts, anything that you identify during your research, and target these terms there in a way that is useful for the user, and interlink so that also can help search engines and users find your relevant good content.
So to break it down, like with an actual example, if let's say someone on Google is looking for sports influencers in Houston, Texas. And why do they want to look for sports influencers in Texas? Because they're running a campaign and they want to be able to go ahead and, hire a couple sports influencers to promote their new energy drink. So, that makes sense. That phrase is something that someone would type into Google and actually search and look for someone. So it could be that this website has those results, right? Right? Because you could find sports influencers in Houston, but remember, they've got 12,000 results pages or even more. So how's Google going to even find that? So what we're saying is, okay, you did the research. You see that's something that people search for. There's a lot of volume. Let's imagine, 1,000 people are searching for it a month. So now you want to come to your website and actually build a static page, right? An exact page that says sports influencers in Texas or in Houston. And show a couple of the top sports influencers and why these guys are the best, and potentially bring some other examples or related people to that, and so on and so forth, and build out this really good page. Now that you have this really good page, now you can start thinking, okay, now maybe in our navigation, right? Until now, we really didn't have a navigation. It was just a search bar. But now we can talk about, okay, we've got different categories. We've got influencers, we've got photographers, and then we've got different areas, Houston, so on and so forth. And in that navigation, you say, okay, influencers, click on that. And now you have a page with all the links. Like, okay, we've got influencers in Texas, influencers in New York. And then we click on the Texas one, and then it takes us to this page. But imagine we're now having like this really organized structure, and Google understands what's going on. There's some organization and rules to what's happening. And now we've got this wonderful page that's integrated in an understandable site architecture that Google can index. And now when that person actually searches for something like that, then the person will be able to find it. So once again, that content, right? The best influencers in Houston, Texas, it's on the website, but it's not in a way that's Google friendly or in a way that Google can digest it and show it to the person who's searching for it. And by doing something like this, then you could really take advantage of, okay, you want you want organic traffic to this website, then you need to start building content out like this, starting with the keyword research.
Exactly. And another very important point is that in this case, this example is really useful because it's a perfect example of a quick win opportunity. Like we said, this specific client, they got most of their traffic on the homepage. So identifying the right, like the best categories for them to target in terms of what is very important for them as a business, but also what is it that most users are looking for example, in Texas, relevant to this offering. It's a great idea to actually link this main category directly from the homepage, because then you are taking advantage of the fact that the homepage is right now the page that performs the best. And this is where Google is going to start by looking the other pages. So, and also where most users are most likely are going to land. So it's a really good example of identifying quick win opportunities that with the minimum of a change, just adding a static page on the homepage, you can get a lot of results faster.
And it's funny, Mandy, like I always think, let's do an experiment. Why do we even need category pages? Let's just have 12,000 results pages. Or 12,000 product pages. And that's exactly like what this was, right? That's what this site is. And it shows you like when you don't have that structure, like giving Google that idea of like, okay, what's important? Google's not just going to go and take 12,000 pages and figure out on its own and decide what it's going to be. But by going in and actually figuring out what are the categories, what's important, what's not important, using things like schema markup and other types of HTML identifiers, it gives Google an idea. And then when you can help Google understand what's important, what's not, what should they index, what they shouldn't, then they're going to do it. But if you don't, here's a perfect example where it's not going to work too well, even with how powerful Google is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think in this case of this specific client, a mix of the two solutions was the best. Like try to identify what you should set to no index and block Google from showing it up on the search results. But at the same time, identify your low quality with a good opportunity to turn to high quality pages and work on them. And also see if you need to create something new. So with this, they should be able to resolve the problem.
So obviously this discussion is more about the journey than the destination, but I'm sure all of you are wondering, okay, Danny, what's up with the couldn't fetch errors on the sitemap? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what our recommendations were in that arena. So once again, all things being equal, imagine if this website had the right content, was set up in the right way, then this couldn't fetch error might have been more of an issue, but let's talk about how we approached it. So number one, we checked all of the sitemaps and they seemed to be accessible and many were actually already indexed by Google. So by going into Google, you can see, is the page actually indexed within Google's index? Checking the pages that exist on that file, are they indexed? And we saw that they were. So Google was seeing them, right? Like it was proof that if the sitemap shows up in Google itself, it means Google saw it, right? Despite this, they were still returning couldn't fetch errors. And I think that's the annoying part. One of the beautiful things about the digital marketing community and specifically the SEO community is that on social media, even when you haven't met people are very friendly and are very generous with giving advice. So I reached out to some of my colleagues and friends on social, and between them and our own research, that if you submit a valid sitemap to Google through Search Console, it's mostly just a suggestion. And if it doesn't work right away, the main option is just to wait. So what that means is you can submit a sitemap, and that's not the key to everything. It doesn't mean Google's going to listen to you. It doesn't mean that Google can still see your site even without it. I understand it's frustrating if there's an error there that says couldn't fetch. But really what it boils down to is it's just one of those things where it's kind of out of your hand. And you got to wait. And hopefully Google will change that error message. But like what we see in this specific case, Google, we could prove that it was seeing everything else already, right? It was seeing the pages, it was seeing the sitemap. But for some reason, in Search Console itself, Google wasn't ready to take that error message and update it. Some other potential ways to improve sitemaps to better meet Google's preferences, specifically in this case, was we found some extra code and script at the top of some of these sitemaps. So we recommended that the client remove those. Now, remember, if you're using like Shopify or WordPress and using the proper plugins, that's going to generate automatically. In this case, this was a custom built site. So naturally, they were building these sitemaps on their own, and that can lead to, errors and things like that. Number two, within the sitemap, they were using multiple schemas, and sitemaps have their own schema type of language and categorization. And they were kind of doing it in a way which didn't go with the best practices. So we recommended that they would remove those as well. And another option was that, like we started at the beginning, something about an XML sitemap. That's the traditional and most common way of providing a sitemap to Google through this XML file. However, you can also provide Google with sitemaps using an RSS feed or a text file. So another suggestion was, hey, like if you're really gung-ho on getting these sitemaps to show up, why don't you try an alternate way of sending in those sitemaps, and maybe that will be the trick on how Google says, okay, yeah, we've read it. The final alternative option is that you can submit sitemaps not via Search Console, but Search Console has an API, or there is a ping tool, and you can use some of these other tools to submit your sitemap. So that's the those are the solutions regarding to this specific problem. But I think what we can truly see from this case study and just in general is we could prove that Google saw everything. And the reason that the website was not ranking was not because the sitemap couldn't go through, but it was because the majority of the content on the website was not Google friendly. It wasn't content that Google wanted or even understood how to index. A lot of it could have been low quality content, spammy content, not on purpose, but just in Google's eyes. And therefore, even if you got 12,000 pages, but it's not going to generate the traffic that you want unless you go ahead and do some significant changes. Mandy, any last thoughts?
No, the only thing I would like to add is that this is a really good example why when it comes to SEO optimizations, it's never what you think it might be in the first place. You always need to check a little deeper. You need to consider how the website is set up, the content. It's not just, for example, in this case, it's not just a Search Console issue. It's not just a sitemap issue. It's not always like just one specific kind of issue. It's always the symptom of a bigger problem. So I think it's really exciting to have this as an example. And it also provides a lot of insight of how you should approach this kind of issues when clients approach you with a problem. You should never just look on what you think it might be, but spend the extra time and go the extra mile to go and see perhaps something else. Spend this do this additional effort just to make sure that you have ticked all the boxes of the list of what you have to check before you actually make a recommendation. Because in this case, we figured out that it was something actually bigger than just the problem of the sitemap.
I love that lesson, and thank you so much for reiterating it. And like that made me think, when we approached the client with sort of our analysis and solution, like it was totally left field for them, but then they're like, it really opened up their eyes, like, ooh, yeah, there is something deeper here. And, we've been trying so long and we think, and we thought that this was the problem. When you're looking to do a site audit or any sort of audit, just going onto a tool and, printing out the technical issues isn't necessarily going to do anything. But one really has to go deep. And like we spoke about, Mandy, last time, I know you obviously use tools, but you like to manually go in and actually, go into the site and breathe it and feel it. And that's really good because as we see in this case, if we would have just said, okay, that's the problem, here's the solution, that we would have lost all this value of trying to educate a client and, you have to think a little bit deeper.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And also, I am a firm believer that no tool will ever tell you what the issues are with your website. It's you just need to go to Google itself. Like I am a firm believer of that. And actually going to the website and clicking around, trying to understand how it is structured, reading the content. It's never just downloading a report from a tool, be it Search Console or SEMrush or anything else. So it's really important, and I think this has brought the most value to our clients, that we actually go and check everything. No, it's not just an export of a report,
Well, Mandy, it's been wonderful discussing this special case study with you today. Another awesome Office Hours episode. I'm sure we're going to do many more together. So thank you for being our guest today to help me present this case study. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Digital Marketing Mentor. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Mentor podcast. Be sure to check us out online at thedmmentor.com and at thedmmentor on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more marketing mentor magic. See you next time.